Here's an important question. When is it that people stopped caring about the homeless? I mean, even in my socialist country where the government didn't really care about human lives that much, they imprisoned dissidents, they sent them to forced labor camps. Believe it or not, they still cared about the homeless. And we're talking about Marxists, okay, like atheists, people with no faith in God. But when you look at how things are today, especially in the Western world, I follow a lot of countries and a lot of policies and different governments, and both the left, both the right, both like even other ideologies that may not gain mainstream, they don't talk about the homeless anymore. And it culminated when I was watching Tucker Carlson a couple of days ago, where he brings this guy who started a petition in LA to complain about a decision from the city councilman who would allow the homeless people to settle in beautiful areas of the town. We're talking about beaches, we're talking about parks, and he is obviously upset that, they're going to be an eyesore, I suppose, and it's going to drive away people who want to go there in order to spend some time at the beach. And I'm thinking like, okay, if this was, let's say, about some LGBT hippies, which would want to have the summer of love on the beaches, if you were to complain about that, well, you would be a bigot. You would be ostracized from civilized society. I'm not saying like there wouldn't be people that would complain about it, but what I am trying to say is that if you were to complain about it, you would be a bigot. You would be labeled as a bad person. In fact, if you look at most social media terms of service, they have this thing where they protect what they consider vulnerable classes, right? So minorities, war veterans, people of various ethnicities, people of various religions, the LGBT community. But it doesn't seem, at least I couldn't find, any mention of the homeless. Apparently, like, the homeless aren't considered to be vulnerable people anymore. I mean, we get to notice the same thing in Switzerland, of all places, where they're trying to throw money at the problem, so they make it someone else's problem. Like, when it comes to the homeless, I suppose every single person says they care a lot about their fellow man, but they just don't want to see their fellow man up close. They don't want to see them in their front yard. They want to see them somewhere else. So, like, Switzerland is paying money for homeless people to go away. Like, imagine if they were to do this with minorities. Imagine if they were to do this with the LGBT community. Like, people would be up in arms. But if they're doing it about the homeless, like, man, no one cares about it. Like, it's so fascinating, right? Like, the whole ideology of leftist thought is about caring about the marginalized people. But I guess, like, some people are more marginalized than others. And some people who are very marginalized, they don't even matter. It's so bizarre, and you get these hot takes on Twitter. Ignore if you know who this person is, okay? This is not about the person. It's just like I want to show the phenomenon where if you have like the ideological talking head say something which can be dumb, then every person on the same side of the culture war are going to blindly follow. I mean, saying it should be illegal to provide anything to the homeless, this is disincentivize people from letting them fuck up your neighborhood. It's not about just being cruel and heartless, but it's also about the fact that it can happen to you. Like, being homeless is something that can happen to literally everyone. If you think it can't happen to you, then you're delusional. It's unlikely to happen to you, but it is a possibility. And I'm telling you this because I did work with homeless people at the hospital. I know their stories. You can be a rich person and then your house catches fire. Your family can pass away in a car crash. These are literal stories that happen to people. Like, very unfortunate events. And it's this really bizarre way of thinking that is starting to take hold in different cultures with different governments that, I don't know, like, homeless people just don't matter. I mean, it happened to me a couple of weeks ago that I gave some money to a homeless person. They didn't give him enough. I gave like $5 Romanian currency. And a lady behind me goes, it's like, hey, he's going to use that money to buy drugs, right? And I'm thinking like, lady, who's your supplier? Where on earth can you buy drugs with $5? What the fuck are you talking about? But it doesn't really matter, because like, oh, she said the correct thing. Like, she's being so intelligent that she said the talking point. It's like, oh, homeless people do drugs. And to be honest, okay, yes, like a lot of people who fall into substance abuse, they end up being homeless. But does that mean that I shouldn't have compassion for them? I can't stop drinking Pepsi. Okay? I can't stop drinking cola. I'm addicted to that. I don't know how it would have been if I would have been born in some unfortunate circumstances where I would actually get addicted to some hardcore substances. I would probably be on the street as well. So why should I not have compassion for these people? What exactly is it that makes me not want to give money to them just because, oh, they might spend it on something that I disagree with? Then there's the people that have mental issues and they're out on the street. And this is a very common question, like, why don't they go to homeless shelters? Right? Because every single time, like, someone sees a homeless person, it's like, well, why don't they go to a homeless shelter? Have you been to a homeless shelter? Because I have been. Let me put it this way. If a person would rather sleep in a park rather than a homeless shelter, it should tell you a lot about that homeless shelter. Most of these places are overcrowded, but that's not the main reason. The main reason seems to be with parasites and disease. Because these places are lice infested, they're very rarely cleaned. And not only that, but if you also have like one sick person there, guess what happens? Contagion spreads. These places stink to high heaven. The staff there, most of the time, are just not happy to be there, let's put it like that. So yeah, that's why homeless people would rather sleep in a park. And this is why you have governments that are taking the measures, instead of trying to fix and address the core issue, they're putting spikes under bridges, or they're making sure that the benches are designed in such a way so that the homeless person can't sleep there. I mean, you don't want civilized society to lay eyes upon them. And again, like, this is what really bewilders me. Because if society would be this cold and heartless non-stop, I would at least understand. It's like, okay, this society likes empathy. But no, we live in a world where we should have empathy for the millionaires, the billionaires, literal royalty. I mean, they're the ones that are suffering. They're the ones that are oppressed. Hey, we should change society so the billionaires can feel better. But no one talks about the homeless unless they're too close to home. If they're too close to home, then we need to sign petitions in order to send them somewhere else where people don't get to see them. Like, this is the morality of modern day societies all across Europe, all across the United States. And no one calls it out. Like, really, am I the only one who notices it? It's so bizarre, isn't it? Okay, I'll tell you why there are homeless people. I'll literally tell you. Okay, I'll come up and I'll say it. Okay, my big brain take, how you can fix the issue. First of all, you need to understand that there's always going to be a specific number of homeless people in every city, in every town, in every country, all around the world. Like, poverty is inescapable for some. Some people might escape it, but like, there will always be a certain number of people that are into poverty. So what you can do is you can have homeless shelters that are clean, that are nice, that are good places for people to be in. And for that, you would have activism for people to donate through charity to these places. Rather than donating money through charity to an NGO that spends millions of dollars on doing some other activism that doesn't really translate into the people on the ground getting anything, you'd have to work through the local communities in order to try to get these places to work. But the problem with these places, believe it or not, is that there are so many regulations. There is so much paperwork involved and so many rules and so many things that most of the time it's very difficult for these places to even get up from the ground. It's the bureaucracy that's actually stopping these places from being good and productive. The second and most important aspect, though, is that while there will always be some people that are homeless and there will always be some people that are poor, there is a certain level after which is unacceptable. And usually, if the level manages to get past what is acceptable, then it's the fault of the politicians. It's the fault of the people in power because of their bad business practices, which is getting people to end up being homeless. Like, for example, in the case of California, from what I can tell, is the high crime rate. I mean, you have politicians that constantly release people from prisons. Why? I don't know. I literally don't know. I don't know why they release people from prisons, but at the same time, what I do know is that if you violated the lockdown, it could be a misdemeanor and you could get into prison. So like, they want people in prison, but just like want different type of people. I don't know. I don't know what is this, like, unlimited compassion for the criminal. But I tell you what happens when you have unlimited compassion for the criminal. You get drugs on the streets. Remember, like, all these people that stigmatize the homeless for being addicted to substance abuse, those substances shouldn't be on the streets. There are European nations without those substances on the streets. Like, even if people would have access to money, they wouldn't be able to buy them. Because there aren't any on the street. And if there aren't in such large quantities to justify so many people being addicted to these substances. So yeah, law and order actually prevents a lot of these people from ending up being homeless. I mean, if you have high crime rate in an area, then people start burglarizing businesses, gangs start extorting businesses for money, and businesses leave. They just leave the neighborhood. They go somewhere else. Insurance gets to skyrocket. People can't afford insurance there. If you go to a bank to get a loan in order to open a business in one of these high crime areas, the bank is less likely to give you the loan. So what ends up happening is that all the potential jobs for the members in those communities go away. And now it's a vicious circle because a lot of people can't afford to get a job in their nearby area. Maybe they would love to flip a burger at McDonald's, but they can't because there is no more McDonald's. So what ends up happening? Well, they join some gang. They join some thing which adds to the problem. And unfortunately, no one wants to talk about it. I know a lot of homeless people that actually come from orphanages. I mean, these are children that were given up for adoption. They couldn't find a family, so they would work through the system until they were 18. And once they were 18, they were kicked out of the orphanage, and on the street, they couldn't find any job. But, that's the main issue. And no one wants to talk about it. Why? Because if you talk about how oppressed and how difficult it is for Harry and his wife to go through the world with so much racism, and America is systemic racism, blah, 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 these things don't really have solutions. Like, people don't actually expect you to fix racism. If you're a politician and you constantly talk about it, no one expects results from you. They just expect that you pass some legislation which makes it look like you're taking the issue seriously, but in reality, you don't really have to show that, hey, look, when I went into power, there were like 25% racism in my town. But now, after 4 years, it's down to 5%. Okay, I did a good job. No one expects that. But if you were to actually campaign on fixing the homelessness issue, now people expect results. Now you can place the politician under a number. Just like you are being placed under a number if you work at a corporation. You're under a number. They will look at how productive you've been last month. You look like how much sales you brought to the company last month. Like, you're always under a number. But the politician, no, he shouldn't be under a number. Because he's a politician. And you know what really upsets me? And like, the reason that I made this video is that it's not that homeless people exist. Because I mentioned, like, I understand that they exist. It's not that I expect everyone to care or that I expect people to give to charity. No. I don't expect any of these. But what really bothers me is the culture. It bothers me when I see actors who are millionaires going to the Oscar Awards where they get a goodie bag worth of $250,000 that has a little hammer that you can use in order to break someone's car window in case their dog has been locked in the car. Okay, that's how compassionate these people are. That's how much these people care about others and how empathetic these millionaires are. So they go to the Oscar Awards to, talk about some movies that no one has ever seen and to lecture you about how we can improve society. And you know what they don't mention? That before the Oscar Awards happened, the city police cleared up all the homelessness from the nearby subway station. Because, like, all the homeless people would gather there and, they would present a risk, a danger. They wouldn't like to have the actors lay eyes upon them. So they actually moved all of these poor people away, the marginalized of the society. They moved them away so that the actors can come up and they can tell you how you can be a better person. And this is, like, really what really upsets me, because no one talks about this. Like, no one even wants to mention this. But we all talk about how we need to help the vulnerable and how we need to give a voice to the voiceless and how we need to talk truth to power. And then, this is why I'm not a leftist, by the way. This is legitimately why I'm not a leftist. Like, if you don't want to be a leftist, join one of these NGOs that tries to help impoverished people. And you're going to see stuff there, and you're going to find yourself being hit by a wall of bureaucracy that is usually being set place by leftist politicians most of the time. And then you're going to see just how few people really care and how few people actually try to help out. And then you get to see the actors lecturing you about being a better person. But anyway, right? I got a little sidetracked, a little bit upset. Like got a little bit of the passion when talking about this. But no, like think it through. Just when is the last time you heard a politician talk about the homeless? When is the last time you heard an actor talk about the homeless? But let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you in the comment section. And yeah, I'm going to try to work on buying a new webcam. Hopefully next month, like this one worked. So if I manage to get a new one, I'll be able to show my skin again. If you'd like to contribute to the channel, I have a subscribe star, or you can send a super chat, and I would really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys tomorrow.